Story 1. It was a stormy evening, the kind where the wind howls like a banshee and rain pours down like a torrential waterfall. Despite the weather, I had a delivery to make. A customer had ordered some food from a remote address, tucked away in the outskirts of town. I hesitated, but the lure of extra tips pushed me to embark on this eerie adventure. As I drove through dark and desolate roads, the GPS took me deeper into the heart of the wilderness. My phone signal weakened, leaving me isolated from the outside world. An unsettling feeling washed over me, but I told myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. Finally arriving at the address, I found a small, isolated cabin hidden amongst the trees. The place had an eerie aura that sent shivers down my spine. Despite my instincts urging me to leave, I couldn't back out now. I cautiously approached the door and knocked, my heart thumping in my chest like a war drum. A tall, haggard man answered the door. He looked peculiar, his eyes devoid of any warmth or humanity. He took the food silently, barely acknowledging my presence. Something about him sent alarm bells ringing in my head, but I tried to brush it off. Then, out of the blue, he spoke, his voice icy and hollow. "Won't you come in, young man? I can't give you a proper tip in this weather. Warm yourself by the fire." A chill ran down my spine, and every nerve in my body screamed at me to run. But curiosity, mixed with a sense of duty, made me step inside. The interior was dimly lit, cluttered with strange trinkets and unsettling artifacts. My eyes fell upon a shelf filled with creepy dolls, each one staring at me with soulless eyes. As I tried to make small talk, the man's replies were cryptic and bizarre. The unease grew, and I wished I had never set foot inside. But that's when I noticed something truly horrifying. A faint whispering sound emanating from the dark corners of the cabin. My host noticed my discomfort and chuckled darkly. "You hear them too, don't you? They're always watching, always whispering." Fear gripped me, and I attempted to leave, but the man stood in my way, blocking the door. Panic set in as I realized the direness of the situation. I pleaded with him to let me go, but he simply smiled, revealing rotten and jagged teeth. It was then that I noticed his sinister grin was reflected in every doll's face on the shelf. My mind raced, and I knew I had to escape this nightmare. Summoning all my strength, I shoved past him and ran towards my car, the echoes of his eerie laughter following me. As I sped away, I glimpsed the man standing at his doorstep, staring at me with those soulless eyes. But that wasn't the end of it. In the days that followed, strange things started happening. Dolls appeared on my doorstep. Eerie whispers haunted my dreams, and an overwhelming feeling of dread clung to me like a shadow. I quit my job as an Uber Eats driver, but the horrors of that night still haunt me to this day. I can't help but wonder what kind of malevolent force I encountered in that cabin, and whether I managed to escape its clutches completely. Story 2. One night, while working for Uber Eats, I received an order with detailed instructions to deliver to a seemingly abandoned house at the end of a desolate street. As I approached the address, I noticed a pale figure standing at the doorstep, dressed in tattered clothes. The customer didn't say a word, just pointed to a spot to place the food. A chill ran down my spine as I left the order and hurried back to my car. But as I glanced in my rearview mirror, I saw the figure standing there, watching me silently. I sped away, unable to shake the feeling that something wasn't right. To this day, I wonder who or what that silent customer was. Story 3. It was a regular evening when I accepted an Uber Eats order that led me to a quaint suburban neighborhood. The GPS directed me to a house that looked ordinary at first glance, but when I approached, I noticed something eerie. The house seemed to fade in and out of existence, like a ghostly apparition. With trembling hands, I knocked on the door, and a woman with hollow eyes answered. She thanked me for the food, but as I turned away, I felt a sudden gust of wind and looked back, only to find the house had vanished without a trace. I drove around the neighborhood, searching in vain, but the house was gone, as if it had never existed. To this day, I can't explain what happened that night. Story 4. One gloomy evening, I received an Uber Eats order from an unfamiliar address. As I arrived at the location, a creepy feeling washed over me. I delivered the food to an abandoned-looking house with boarded-up windows and overgrown vegetation. On my way back to the car, I found a crumpled note on the ground. It read, "Leave now, or face the consequences." My heart raced, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Ignoring the warning, I continued my deliveries. But as the night wore on, strange things started happening. My car radio turned on by itself, and chilling whispers echoed through the speakers. The note's warning haunted me, and I couldn't escape the feeling that I had stumbled into something sinister. Story 5. One stormy night, I accepted an Uber Eats order from a seemingly ordinary apartment building. The customer's name and address checked out, but when I reached the floor, there was no apartment with that number. Confused, I called the customer, and a raspy voice answered, claiming they were waiting in the hallway. As I turned around, I saw a shadowy figure watching me from the end of the corridor. My heart pounded, and I tried to make sense of the situation. But when I turned back to dial the customer's number again, the figure had disappeared, leaving me with an inexplicable sense of dread. Story 6. On a foggy night, I received an Uber Eats order that led me to an old warehouse on the outskirts of town. The place was desolate and gave off an unsettling vibe. As I entered the dimly lit interior, I noticed strange symbols scrawled on the walls. I delivered the food to a dark corner, where a cloaked figure awaited. They didn't utter a word, only reaching out to take the order. Fear consumed me, and I hurriedly left the place. But as I glanced back at the warehouse, the figure was gone, and the symbols on the wall seemed to glow with an eerie light. I still wonder what kind of ritual or sinister presence lurked within that abandoned warehouse. Story 7. Late one night, I received an Uber Eats order from an unfamiliar address. The delivery location was in the heart of a dense forest. Intrigued but wary, I followed the directions to find a small cabin hidden amongst the trees. As I approached, I noticed flickering candles illuminating the dark interior. The customer seemed amiable, but as I left, they handed me a sealed envelope saying it was for my safety. When I opened it later, I found a chilling handwritten note that read, "You've seen too much. They're coming for you now." Panic surged through me, and I couldn't escape the feeling of being pursued. I left the job soon after, haunted by the haunting message and the unknown entities that supposedly lurked in the shadows. Story 8. On a moonlit night, I accepted an Uber Eats order from a haunted-looking mansion. The moment I arrived, I sensed an eerie presence surrounding the place. A lady in a flowing white dress greeted me, her face pale and ethereal. She asked if I could take her to the city before delivering the food. Feeling uneasy, I agreed. As we drove, she remained silent, staring into the distance. When we reached the destination, she vanished without a word, leaving behind a trail of chilling cold air. To this day, I wonder if I had unknowingly given a ride to a ghost, forever bound to the spectral world. Story 9. One foggy evening, I received an Uber Eats order that led me to an isolated road known for its dark history. Local legends warned of malevolent spirits haunting the area. As I approached the address, an overwhelming sense of dread washed over me. Despite my fear, I ventured onward, but the GPS seemed to malfunction, leading me deeper into the woods. Panic set in when I saw shadowy figures lurking at the edge of the forest. I tried to turn back, but the road ahead seemed endless. Finally, I emerged back onto a familiar street, but the memory of that forbidden road haunts my nightmares to this day. Story 10. One stormy night, I accepted an Uber Eats order from a historic hotel known for its gruesome past. The moment I stepped inside, the air grew heavy and a cold breeze swept through the lobby. Ignoring the eerie feeling, I delivered the food to a room on the upper floor. As I approached the door, I heard faint whispers and the sound of footsteps echoing through the empty hallway. No one answered when I knocked, but a chilling voice called out, "Leave the food and go." I did as instructed, but as I rushed to leave, the door slammed shut behind me, trapping me in the haunted hotel's sinister grip.